Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, greetings, and welcome back to Let's Play Touhou 13, 10 Desires. In fact, welcome to the last stage of the game. So, we have finally arrived here within the tomb where the divine spirits are gathering, waiting for her voice to speak up. Who is this mysterious sage that all the other beings wanted to protect? Does she still have the same intentions as 1400 years ago? Will she be hostile and evil? Or will she perhaps be completely innocent? Let us solve the case of the divine spirits and finish this once and for all. There we are, the center of the mausoleum. This is where the fate of this world, Gensokyo, could be decided. However, somehow Rimu feels like that despite the many divine spirits gathering here, this place doesn't feel very sinister at all. Just who is this mysterious sage? Well, here is the moment you have all been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. There she is. Meet the mysterious sage everyone kept talking about, everyone wanted to protect, and everyone was somehow related and connected to Miss Toyosatomimi no Miko. Well, ladies and gentlemen, and now that the final boss of the game has finally revealed herself, it is also time to go about the final bit of backstory. Yes, indeed, another large portion of history about this mysterious sage. Who is she? Why is she here? And what does she desire? What are her plans? I definitely want to know more about this person that everyone wanted to protect. So, let us dive into the history of Toyosatomimi no Miko and find out why everything in this game centers around her. "1400 years ago, a young child was born in a stable. The young girl was quickly recognized as a genius at an early age and began to live a life surrounded by people of high status and positions. Her true parents were never really found. During her time with these people, the young girl overheard many complaints by the humans about all kinds of things. They would let their tongues loose around her, assuming that the little girl would not be able to understand them, and so she heard a lot of idle grumbling from the servants and such. However, young Miko was able to understand them all and even provide very specific advice right away. for she was not only a genius, but she had in fact been born with the ability to listen to 10 people speaking at the same time, 10 desires at once. Over the course of time, rumors about Miko's mysterious ability and intelligence started to spread throughout the land, and eventually she was able to gain an enormous amount of popularity, ultimately allowing her to become a saint, assisting those in need of help. The people quickly learned to admire the young woman. They talked of her as a gift from the gods, a holy being that had been sent to make the hard life of every human being simpler. To them, Miko had become a symbol of joy and hope. But they were the only ones bathing in that happiness. Despite all the achievements of her early life, Toyo Satomimi no Miko was not full of happiness and joy. Instead, her mind was troubled with serious issues, depressions. One could consider it almost torn. During the day and the night, the young girl would always continue to speak to herself. The earth hasn't passed on from the age of the gods, and the seas are filled to the brim. Why must humans be forced to accept their own death? Yes, despite all the glory and fame and love surrounding her, Miko was dissatisfied beyond belief about her ultimate fate, that as a human being, she would eventually die. One day, her existence would simply fade away into the darkness. Everything would fall apart and disappear, and nobody would remember her. Day after day, week after week, month after month, the young woman would not be able to calm her mind down. She would not be able to accept the human fate. Back then, Toyo Satomimi no Miko was still nothing more than an ordinary woman who had been born with a unique ability, and she had used that ability to spread happiness, to help the people around her. However, it would be the last time that Miko would believe in the good side of life. Soon everything would change, and her descent into corruption would slowly begin. One day, something peculiar happened. A stranger Miko had never met before visited her home. The young woman called herself Seiga Kaku, and she had heard rumors about Miko for a long time already, and had come to spread the so-called powers of Taoism to the young saint. Seiga's intentions were that the saint, with all of her popularity, could convince the world around her to worship one and the same belief. Then, the powerful entities known as hermits could take control over that belief and the country as well, to rule over everything. Toyo Satomimi no Miko's heart danced in joy upon hearing that she could become an immortal being. However, she was also confused about the entire rule over everything part. She told Seiga that just her faith and popularity would never be enough to overtake all of Japan. Why should they take Japan over anyway? The hermit did not really care about national politics so long as she could further her own goals. But Miko held a different view about the situation. She was completely against the violence, and so Seiga Kaku recommended that Miko should make the appearance of becoming a Buddhist. Upon learning that Buddhism was a strict creed that forbade murder, Miko determined that it would be a good means to calm the nation and eventually unite it under one belief. In her opinion, it seemed like a harmless plan, and it was ready to be set in motion. Throughout the following years, Toyosatomimi no Miko began to spread Buddhism throughout Japan in order to ensure that those without political power would not gain power. In the shadows, she secretly advanced her own experiments and training with Taoism, and as a result, she slowly obtained superhuman abilities and left behind a number of rumors and even legends about herself, which everyone started to become familiar with. However, with the powers came the corruption, the downfall. Miko was slowly being consumed. She wanted more. She wanted to become known as a living legend throughout the entire world, and so she ultimately decided that she wanted to control the country. She would still spread Buddhism to ensure that nobody would get hurt, but she had set her mind on controlling everything. But even with all of her successes, Miko was still an impatient person. She did not wish to wait for the powers of Taoism to grant her immortality, and so she turned to the use of various unusual and forbidden materials and elixirs to reach her ultimate goal sooner. This, however, directly interfered with the bond of nature she was trying to create with Taoism, and as a result, the elixirs and materials started to ruin her body from within. In the end, she had destroyed her own health because of the very Taoism that was meant to grant her immortality. Fearing that her life would end before she could achieve eternal life, Miko decided to become a Shikaizen. This was a secret technique in which she would die in order to be resurrected as a god-like entity. Seiga Kaku had once used a similar technique to make herself appear to be dead so she could chase after her dreams. But Miko desired more, and she was more than willing to take her very own life. However, Miko was afraid to undergo the procedure alone and reached out to her close friend Mononobe no Futo, convincing her to undergo the same technique, but as the first of the two. Believing in Miko's power, Futo happily agreed to become a test subject and eventually committed suicide. Once Miko confirmed that after death, Futo's body would continue to sleep without decaying, she confronted Seiga about her plan, asking her to watch over the bodies, if necessary, for an eternity. And Seiga, being immortal, believed in Miko's plan as well, and was willing to watch over the two, waiting for the day when the plan would come to bear fruit. And finally, the last step of the plan arrived. Toyo Satomimi no Miko, the young woman who had become a saint, who had once helped the people but had now fallen into selfish corruption, committed suicide as well, going to sleep and waiting for the resurrection as a divine being. Well, this is where Mononobe no Futo's story ended as well. But what happened afterwards? How did the story continue? The answers shall now be revealed. Following her death, Miko had originally planned to awaken when the nations felt limited by its Buddhist precepts and felt the need for a new and legendary saint. However, her calculations went awry, and the nation was controlled by Buddhism for over 1,000 years. Eventually, powerful Buddhist monks found out about the actions of the one known as Toyosatomimi no Miko and her friends. To them, her plans were nothing more than a selfish crime against one's mortality and beliefs. And so, they started to place seals on Miko's mausoleum and grave, preventing her from re-entering the world of the living. The plan of the young saint, after all this time, had been foiled. Time continued to pass on, and with the passing, many people forgot about the events of the past. Over the course of time, the sealed saint had developed even more powerful abilities. She could listen to the desires of human beings all over the world, understand and see what was going on outside of her grave. Because of that, she also witnessed how old traditions faded and modern technologies were born. People forgot the legends of old times, including those of the legendary saint who was able to listen to 10 desires at the same time. Temples mostly disappeared, and skyscrapers were born from the modern ages. The humans learned to live in a better way. They were able to leave their own planet and conquer the moon. The planet changed completely. In the end, the plan of the young saint to become a living legend had failed. Nobody remembered Toyosatomimi no Miko anymore, and because of that, her mausoleum faded out of existence and appeared in the magical world of Gensokyo, the place where anything supernatural or forgotten would end up. This, however, was a moment that Miko had been waiting for. Since there weren't any temples in Gensokyo at that time, the seals of her grave wore off, and so she prepared for her resurrection to begin. Whenever she felt it was necessary, she would once again return to the world of the living after all this time. But once again, somebody foiled her plans. At about the time when Miko began the resurrection ritual, a new temple was built, and, whether by plan or by chance, it was built directly over her mausoleum. And of course, that temple was none other than the Myorin temple of Byakuren Hijiri, the saint and only Buddhist of Gensokyo. However, this new seal had come too late. Miko had already begun to break free from her prison, gathering the beings known as divine spirits to power and witness her return. The only questions which remained now in the story were: would Toyosatomimi no Miko let herself be held back by a Buddhist monk once more? Or would she finally fight back and destroy her enemies. A fight just like the old religious war between the Mononobe clan of the old gods and the Soga clan of the Buddhists. Who would achieve victory this time? Toyo Satomimi no Miko. She never knew her parents. She grew up alone, surrounded by people who first did not care about her. Then she learned to use her abilities to spread happiness, to gain followers, to gain an existence. However, she could not face the harsh reality of her mortal life, fell into depressions, and eventually she was corrupted, found a liking in the powers of Taoism, which in the end only led to her wanting to rule over the country, led to her body being ruined. And now she is nothing more than a selfish person. Yes, she can listen to the desires of other people, but only so she can manipulate them, only so she can tell what they are going to say before they even speak it out loud. Miko only cares about her own desires anymore. She wants to be a living legend. She is no longer the woman she used to be. The young saint from 1400 years ago is gone, and the only thing left are selfish desires. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the final and biggest backstory of the game. So, now that we know more about this mysterious sage, or actually saint, who she is, where she came from, and what she desires to achieve, let us jump right into the conversation to determine whether or not she is evil. Toyo Satomimi no Miko begins the chat by talking about that she observed Rimu's actions from the very start, even before she was born. Man, that is quite something she used her powers for. And not just that, she greatly admires the Shrine Maiden for being a Yukai hunter. However, there is a problem. She also used her powers to observe Rimu's friendship with certain Yukai and even Byakuren Hijiri, and now wants to determine on whose side she truly stands. And to top it all off, while Rimu is still thinking about how to respond to what she just heard, Miko has already used her powers once again to see the answer, realizing that the Shrine Maiden is definitely going to be a hostile individual and therefore prepares for combat. Rimu quickly concludes that she is most annoyed by Miko's ability to mind read, but ultimately makes her decision. Having all Yukai destroyed sounds like a little dream come true to her. After all, they are the ones who always plagued Gensokya from the very beginning, even before the magical world was created. However, there is something that speaks against this action. Rimu does not just hunt Yukai down, she also has a lot of them as her friends. And therefore, for the first time ever, Rimu decides to fight for the Yukai, even though not directly admitting it. And as to if Miko's intentions are evil, they are. She is most determined to kill the only saint, monk and Buddhist of Gensokya, as well as all of her followers. The good Miko, who long ago was a saint and helped the people with her natural born ability to feel better, to feel happiness and joy and everything, that Miko is long gone. The only Miko left here in front of us is a being filled with selfish desires, and she must be stopped. So, this is it, ladies and gentlemen, the final fight of the game. However, there is going to be a catch with this one. You are only going to see the hard difficulty version of it. Why? Well, because the hard difficulty version is much more epic in my opinion than the normal version. There are awesome music cues. Miko's theme song basically dictates the entire epicness of the fight, and, well, it just overall feels more epic to fight the final boss only once. Another reason could also be that this video is already 25 minutes long, and I don't want this to become too long, even though the last episode was already half an hour, but if I would include both fights, then this could easily reach the 40-minute mark, and I really don't want that to happen. I already went way overboard with all the previous episodes. In any case, that is how it is going to be. No bombs, no spirit attack, only a pure fight to the death. I am sure that that is the only thing that can actually break Touhou no Miko's spirit. And with all of that said, please just do me 3 favors. Listen to the epic music, think of Touhou no Miko's sad backstory and what we are fighting for, and keep a close eye on the life counter. Believe me, this is going to be very epic. One of the most epic fights I ever had in any video game. So, with all of that out of the way, let us jump back to the beginning of the stage on hard difficulty and let the final of the game begin. Oh, and of course, before I forget it, every boss needs to have at least one epic line of dialogue before the fight begins. And this is Miko's line. This era, where humans deny my existence, and I have become a forgotten legend, is what I was waiting for. Now, try to bare your fangs at me, and I shall become a living legend once again by defeating you.